Well, hi there. Hello, and welcome back to the Pitch Grid. Thank you so much for tuning in once again to another episode. We are a podcast that covers the NFL, or American football, and the EFL Championship, which is the second tier of English football. We cover all the games, players, news, and oddities that come out of both leagues. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's go grid side as we talk about all things NFL. And let's start off with Jaire Alexander. Now, this has recently come to a head with reports from Dom Dombrowski, who is the leading source on all things Packers football, that the Packers and Jaire Alexander situation has come to a head, and basically everything is on the table. The Packers could trade Alexander, they could cut him, or he could sign a contract extension with this team. Now, the reason this has come to a head is because Alexander, the last 2 seasons, has not played very much. 7 games in each of the last 2 seasons. Last year, he was practicing in a limited capacity but never went on IR. So the question is, at this point, do the Packers want to extend a player that is injury prone? And even though he is a stalwart of that Packers defense, does the franchise think in the long term he is part of the future? I mean, he is getting older. He's a part of a position group that has a very quick shelf life. You can be good for a few years, then all of a sudden you fall off a cliff. Just look at Darrell Revis. And Alexander seems to be going down a very injury ridden path, which is unfortunate for him. But for the Packers and Rob Gutekunst in the front office, they have to look at it is, do they want stability at corner or do they think they need to move on? Because, and this is why, if they were to cut him right now, they would gain nearly $6.8 million in cap space by releasing him. However, if they were to designate him as a post June 1st cut, the Packers would gain $17 million in cap space. So if they wanted to, say, have a stopgap replacement in training camp and then maybe trade for a corner, they could do that. However, would anyone want to give them a corner is also a question. It comes down to, do the Packers think that Jaire Alexander can stay healthy and be a part of what they deem to be a Super Bowl window with Jordan Love? They gave Love the extension recently on his contract. They just drafted a couple of receivers. They drafted their first wide receiver in the first round since 2002. They are trying to load up, and they addressed a lot of the questions on both sides of the ball that they had and they needed in the draft. I thought they had a very good draft. So really, the Packers feel like they need to optimize this window with Jordan Love, and is Alexander going to be part of that? Obviously, if he leaves, it's going to be a huge, massive hole in the corner room. Are they going to be able to replace him? They could. I mean, this is a defense given last year that without Alexander for 10 of those games, the Packers had a very stingy defense. They were not giving up a ton of points, and honestly, the defense was why they were in a lot of the games last year they were in. So it's very plausible they could. In talking to some Packers fans, they are pretty torn about it because they love the player, but they feel like he's getting to a point where he's old, he's injury prone, and he wants more money than probably the Packers can give him right now. So if that's the case, it feels like a very unstable situation, and maybe the Packers are just waiting to see if he does anything by June 1st. If they're able to get a contract extension with him, great. If not, by June 1st, maybe they can cut him, get some cap space, and maybe try to reboot at the corner position with some of their younger talent or some of the up and coming people they could trade for. In these situations, there's never going to be exactly a happy ending for either side. And that's just how it works in the NFL, to be honest. Matt Gay, the kicker, who used to be a Super Bowl champion with the LA Rams a few years ago, he signed with the Colts after that Super Bowl with the Rams and became the richest kicker in NFL history with the contract he signed in Indy. He made 85% of his kicks there with the Colts, and then they let him go a month or so ago. Well, he has just signed with the Commanders this week. It is a 1 year deal worth up to $5 million with 4.35 million guaranteed. From what I have seen, that is actually the most ever guaranteed money for a 1 year deal for a kicker, I think, which is pretty incredible. Obviously, the Commanders want to shore up that position, considering they're also trying to optimize a window like the Packers with Jane Daniels, though. Zane Gonzalez, while he has been solid for them, missed some big kicks for the Commanders last year. And Matt Gay is a pretty reliable kicker for the most part. I mean, 85% isn't like perfect, but it's still pretty good considering most kickers don't even make 90%, and the ones that are good, like Harrison Butker and Justin Tucker, are very rare and hard to come by. It feels like the Commanders are trying to shore up that position and make sure they have a reliable special teams unit. And Gay is almost 50% in his career from 50 plus, which is pretty good as well. So I don't think it's a bad signing for them. Also, the Falcons did pick up Drake London's 5th-year option. I mean, they kind of had to, considering he's the best receiver in that squad. They didn't really address receiver in this draft, which I think they should have. There were some great talents here. Instead, they traded up and got an extra edge rusher, which granted the Falcons need edge rushers, but I feel like they wasted a pick trying to go all in on the defense. Granted, that's Raheem Morris's specialty, so I can't totally fault him for that, but still at the same time, it feels very weird that they didn't try to address the receiver room, which has been a problem for the Falcons the last few years. Another big story that came out of the draft was, of course, the Shedeur Sanders prank call. The fallout has come pretty swiftly. NFL has fined the Falcons $250,000. If you don't know, it came out on Sunday that apparently the defensive coordinator for the Falcons' son, Jax, somehow found access to his dad's iPad that had the number on and recorded himself calling Shador and then hanging up. Well, he didn't get fined himself. His dad did though. Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator, he got fined $100,000 for this. And apparently, this wasn't the only prank call in this draft. Abdul Carter has come out and said that someone who claimed to be from the Jacksonville Jaguars front office called him, and they were going to take him with the second pick because they traded up with the Cleveland Browns, and obviously that didn't happen. Carter went to the Giants. And then there are others like Mason Graham, Tyler Warren, Kyle McCord, and Chase Lund that also got prank calls during the draft. I mean, Drew Rosenhaus, Abdul Carter's agent, in an ESPN piece is quoted as saying that this is not right, that phone numbers need to be more secure than this in the league. These are numbers that are given strictly to the teams in order to contact them in case they should be drafted by that team. Well, obviously, that has not happened, and these have been serious leaks. Somehow, the NFL has to really address this and crack down on why is this happening and how are they going to address it. Added security measures, who knows? Maybe it's going to be on a phone and like on the person's phone, like the coach or something, and he has to have like a password protected. There's ways you can do this, by the way. You can do like two pass keys on iPhones now or like it's a touch, it only accessed with your fingerprint that you use for your touch on your iPhone. This doesn't feel like that could be that hard. Added extra security. I mean, I'm sure people who know about tech well enough could easily bypass some of that stuff. But in order to give extra security to private numbers like this that are to kids that want to be drafted and they have these numbers specifically for that purpose, it feels like a security issue that the NFL has to address before the next draft, or else this will become a problem once again. And more players will have that happen to them, especially if they're not well liked. Like Shador is not very well liked in league circles. It'll be very fascinating to see how the league takes that up. I just really quick, we did do the draft recap last episode, but I wanted to go over a few of my winners of the draft real quick. I did give the Packers, Patriots, Chiefs all A plus or A's or A minuses. I gave the Chiefs an A minus initially just because I didn't think they got enough skill position players. But then thinking about it, Jaden Royals to me is a very underrated pick. And a lot of people are really high on where he went and how he was drafted. He's got really good speed and versatility as well. And then the guy from SMU is pretty solid as well. So it's a lot better than I thought it was initially. And I mean, it's not a lot of skill position players, but it does add an extra receiver in the mix that could be a low round steal for the Chiefs. The Broncos, Ravens, and Chargers also got high A's for me. The Panthers as well were a sneaky surprise draft. I was pretty surprised by that. The Panthers have not been really known for their success lately in drafting and in team building, but they did pretty well this draft. They also, by the way, did sign Hunter Renfrow this week, the former Raiders receiver who took a year off, and that was because it also came out this week that Hunter Renfrow had been dealing with ulcerative colitis, which is no joke to deal with. I personally have dealt with that myself and am still dealing with it off and on. So kudos to him for battling that and being a tough warrior and still wanting to play football somehow. That is such a draining chronic disease that sometimes never feels like it's going to go away. So props to Hunter Renfro. Hope he goes off. The losers of this draft for me, pretty simply, were the Bengals, Raiders, Dolphins, and Vikings. And to me, for more than one reason, for each of these teams, it felt like they reached for a lot of their picks or had picks they really weren't explainable. The Raiders, for example, were reaching for talent like the guy from Iowa State in the third round when they could have probably gotten him in the fifth or fourth round, maybe. And the Bengals taking Taj Brooks still confuses me to no end because they had a pretty solid running back room anyway. So why add to it? I get depth, but at the same time, I feel he could have been used elsewhere. And he's a good running back. I just think he's not a good fit for Cincinnati. And since they especially already have a pretty good running back room as well. The Dolphins, they had Kenneth Grant, but they also, I felt like, reached for some picks. And then the Vikings, I don't think they really used the 4 or 5 picks they had very well. I feel like they just tried to desperately grab at a few places they felt like they needed to. It just didn't feel like a coherent draft with any plan of attack, if that makes any sense. All right, and that's all of our NFL news. Let's head pitch side and talk EFL. We've got a few things to talk about over here. We do have to talk about the end of season awards for the championship. Of course, EFL, with the season ending, had the end of season awards, which include Young Player of the Season, Manager of the Season, and Player of the Season for each EFL league. And of course, other awards that we're not going to get into. Specifically, these are the ones that deal with on the field stuff. For Manager of the Year of the championship, Scott Parker won it, and I think that's quite well deserved. He led Burnley in his first year to a incredible campaign where, unless Leeds slip up in their game this week, Burnley are probably going to finish second in the championship, and that's off of almost 100 points. This campaign, with a historic defensive mark that will probably never be broken again. Burnley this year have only allowed, coming into this week, they have so far allowed only 15 goals in the championship. That is insane. Leeds have been considered by far this year to be the best team in the championship, and they've allowed 29 goals, I believe, which is insane that the best team in the championship still isn't the best defensive team. And it just shows how Scott Parker has built this team to just be a pesky, gritty side that will not let you find the back of the net and frustrate you to no end. And then are brilliant in the attack and the counter and just can punish you in so many different ways. It's absolutely perfect ball for the championship, and it showed this campaign. And well deserved to Scott Parker. Many had doubts about him, including me, and he has proven all of us wrong. So good luck to them in the Prem. Gustavo Hammer was the player of the season in the championship. The Dutchman had 9 goals and 7 assists in the campaign and was a key piece in the midfield for Chris Wilder's side as they finished third in the league. You can't say enough about how dangerous Gustavo Hammer is in the championship. He's proven this before and he's done it again. Just crucial player and very well deserved. For player of the season, Joe Bellingham was the young player of the season from Sunderland. Bellingham made history as now 2 brothers have won player of the season. Of course, the brother of Joe was Jude Bellingham, formerly Birmingham City, now at Real Madrid. And now both Bellingham brothers have won, ironically enough, right before with all these transfer rumors of Job heading to another club that Jude went to, which was Borussia Dortmund. Obviously, Jude didn't go to Sunderland, but this is quite ironic considering Job is following a very similar path out of the championship, maybe to Borussia Dortmund. If not, there's a lot of Premier League clubs that will also want his services in the upcoming transfer window. He did well this campaign. Of the players up for Young Player of the Season, it felt like Job was the most deserving. If you look at a full body of seasonal work, it just feels interesting that he's the one that gets to win it. And a lot of people are saying that, oh, it's a Bellingham. Of course he was going to win it. No, I think he has a lot of talent. It's just on a team crowded full of young talent in Sunderland. It feels like there were others that also could have probably won it. But it was well deserved. I think Bellingham did pretty well this season. And then we go to the team of the season for the EFL, which also came out during the awards. There were no surprises in the goalkeeper and center back choices, as James Trafford, Marco Esteve, and CJ Egan Riley, all from Burnley, snatched those places up, which, as we mentioned earlier, only 15 goals allowed this season. So fair play. Can't argue with that at all. Jaden Bogle and Harrison Burrows make up the wingback spots, both very well deserved. Two of the best in the championship, having always provided a great threat in attack and were very solid in defense all season long for their respective clubs. Bogle with Leeds United and Harrison Burrows with Sheffield United. Really can't make any complaints there. Ayo Tanaka, who in my book was Leeds United signing of the year, was a crucial part to the Leeds attack and also was very solid in defense. Just a vital cog in the Leeds United structure. The Japanese internationals' first year in the championship goes up, first time asking to the Premier League. He's paired with the young player of the season, Joe Bellingham, which, in my opinion, is one of the first gripes you can probably have with this, as there's the likes of Josh Brownhill from Burnley, who had a lot more goal contributions, was incredibly deadly on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, was crucial to helping Burnley score a lot. You could make that argument. You could also say Finn Azaz from Middlesbrough would have been a argument here, as he led the championship in goal contributions and had double digit goals and assists, but I mean, he won Young Player of the Season, so he was probably going to make Team of the Season. It just feels like Brownhill maybe was probably a candidate that should have gotten in here. Then Gustavo Hammerfish is off the backfield. Player of the Season, yeah, well deserved. I don't think you can make arguments there. Dan James from Leeds United made the cut as a winger. He had a breakout campaign with Leeds this season, and I think that's totally well deserved with how he has played and how Leeds have been this year. Josh Sargent makes up this attack, and he led the championship in goals this year, so I guess you can't really argue that, although you could also say that there are a lot of other strikers that were probably more effective the entire season. Sargent was injured for a good chunk of the season and then came on and was really hot here at the end of the season. The one argument that I really have, though, Boreas Signs is the other last part of this lineup. And Boreas Signs had a great start to the campaign, was red hot. He could almost do no wrong. He was scoring from everywhere and making it look incredibly easy. And then he had the 7-game suspension. And when he came back from that suspension, he just never looked the same. I mean, he's scored a couple of goals since then, but it just hasn't felt like the start of the season. And to me, there's others that probably deserve it more than Signs. If you look at an entire season's body of work, there's the likes of Josh Murphy from Pompey. There's Jason Knight of Bristol City, Ryan Hardy of Plymouth. All of these have had incredible seasons all around, and it feels like Signs got him on reputation. I mean, yes, he's an incredible goal scorer, no doubt. On his day, he can score from anywhere and has the athleticism and eye for goal that few in the championship have. However, if we're going off of this is the team of the season. This is the team that on the entire season was the best in the championship. Signs is great. He is one of the best talents in the championship, no doubt. And he's got eyes internationally on him. But I don't think this year that you could say he deserved it based on a full season's body of work. Josh Murphy, I think, probably could take that spot quite easily. And I would not be complaining about it because he's carried Pompey's attack on his shoulders all season and has been so good for so long and been very deadly on both attacking and assisting for Pompey. And it's been one of the main reasons they've stayed up. So that's just me. Let me know in the comments below if you disagree. All right, let's head to the final match day of the week. We've got so many good matchups that impact both sides of the table. So let's go over this real quick. Burnley and Leeds already have secured promotion. That's no doubt. Leeds are probably going to win the title unless they lose to Plymouth at home park this week because they have such a superior goal difference to Burnley. However, if Leeds do slip up and lose and Burnley win, then Burnley will win the title. That's the only way Burnley are going to win the title. Otherwise, it looks like Leeds are going to wrap this up. Go down to the relegation battle. We did have Cardiff City mathematically relegated last week after their draw to West Brom. And the other two places are occupied currently by Plymouth and Hull City. Meanwhile, the playoff places, we have Bristol City and Coventry City currently in the playoff places, but are the only two places that are not secured yet, as Sheffield United and Sunderland both have third and fourth respectively locked up. Sheffield United, of course, having third, and Sunderland having fourth. They're just awaiting whoever is going to secure the spots on the final day. Without further ado, let's get to the matches and start off with Derby County hosting Stoke City. The Rams come into this off of a crucial 2-0 victory over Hull City. Stoke, meanwhile, got thumped at the hands of Leeds United and are looking for some answers. Stoke come into this 2 points from safety, while Derby are only a point off Stoke. A draw is probably enough for Stoke. However, they probably need 3 points to mathematically secure safety, considering Oxford secured safety last week at 52 points and Portsmouth at 53. Derby definitely need all 3 points because then that would tie them with Oxford on 52 points. And that's without Oxford's results factoring into this. Currently, right now, Derby are at 49, so they would definitely need the win to secure safety. A loss for Stoke would definitely put them in danger of anyone like Hull or Luton or Preston creeping up behind them and going above them. However, it doesn't feel like Derby are going to lose this game. I feel like they're going to be desperate enough. They have the better run in right now than Stoke. They lost to Sheffield United and Leeds back to back. They're obviously way better opponents than Derby are. And Stoke have the talent to win this game, but it's at Derby, and I feel like they're going to have the home crowd behind them. So I feel like Derby are going to probably pull this one out barely. And I say that because it just feels like this is going to be such a scrappy game that no one knows who's going to win. Next one is Bristol City hosting Preston North End. And this is huge at both ends of the table. Bristol City are in fifth currently. However, they're only a point above sixth and the other playoff spot teams like Millwall, and 2 points above Blackburn and 3 above Middlesbrough right now, who are the remaining contenders for the last playoff spot. So Bristol City really need a win to mathematically secure fifth. Meanwhile, Preston North End somehow go from being comfortably mid-table a few weeks ago to only a point above safety and really needing all 3 points to really feel comfortable in the championship next season. It's at Ashton Gate, right? And Preston have not been really good on the road. Preston are not a team that score a ton of goals and rely mainly on trying to scrape results by very closely. They lost that huge 6-pointer to Plymouth last week, 2-1. They lost to Hull. They lost to QPR. They lost to Leeds. They haven't won a game since they beat Portsmouth 2-1 back in March, which feels forever ago. And now they really need a win. And do I feel like they can get a win at Ashton Gate? I can't say I would guarantee that. I could honestly see with the home crowd behind Bristol City, I could see them pulling all 3 points out of this, like a gutty 1-0 win or a 2-0 win. I just don't see Preston really scoring goals. If they somehow do pull off this upset, then Bristol City has a lot of pressure on them to survive in the playoffs, and that would be a huge choke job, considering they felt like the informed team in the playoff race, and now all of a sudden they're clinging on to fifth, and a slip up could mean other teams catch them, and that would be crazy to think about. Other game that affects the relegation scrap is Luton Town going to West Brom, and the Hatters need all 3 points again because we have this cluster of 3 teams in Derby, Preston, and Luton, all at 49 points. So a win for Luton at the Hawthorns secures them status in the championship next season. It feels like Luton should win this, and here's why. West Brom, they don't have anything to play for at this point. They lost all their playoff ambition a couple weeks ago, and once Mowbray was sacked, that was officially the end of it. And Luton are just in blazing hot form right now. They've beaten Coventry, they've beaten Bristol City, and they've beaten Derby County. They lost to Blackburn, oddly enough. That started the Blackburn hot streak that we'll get to in a bit. But this feels like a team that really is going to stay up. Luton just feel good right now. And one more result sees them in the championship for another year. I think they'll do it too. I think a 2-1 win, considering that West Brom last week had a 0-0 draw with Cardiff, who are now relegated. It feels like that kind of epitomizes West Brom right now, just flat and not deserving of any results right now. And Luton really feel like they deserve this result. And I think they pull through with a win on the final day to secure status in the championship. I'm going to say probably a 2-1 score there for Luton. And if they somehow choke this, they have to be very careful. The tricky game that is Hull going to Fratton Park and taking on Portsmouth. Hull come into this losing 2-0 to Derby County, and that was just an awful game for the Tigers. They really needed that win. They lost 1-0 to Derby, but still, they had most of the possession. They had most of the chances. They just couldn't find the one killer shot. And it's against a Derby team that just has found their legs a bit lately, considering they've been in a relegation scrap for so long. And now Hull, who felt like they could sneakily secure their safety, are now fighting for their very lives against a Portsmouth team that has been up and down. Their last result, they had a draw with Sheffield Wednesday, and they beat Watford before that, and they beat Norwich in that crazy 5-3 game. Of course, have already secured safety. At Fratton Park, though, I feel like they're going to have an urge to want to play up for the home fans for their final match, and Hull City are going to be throwing the kitchen sink at this game. They need a win and other results to go their way because I think they need a win and one other team to slip up and they'll be safe. Otherwise, if everyone else stays status quo, they probably go relegated down to League One. Which feels weird for Hull City considering the last few years they've scraped together seasons in the championship, and last year even were just missing the playoffs. And now here they are fighting for a spot in the championship. And this is after sacking Rosenia. This feels like such a fall from grace. I was talking about Josh Murphy earlier, the team of the season contention. If he were to somehow get a winner here against Hull and relegate Hull City, then I really think that would cement his being snubbed status and the team of the season. And Hold, they can't have anything less than a win. A draw almost does nothing for them, really. I mean, if they were to draw like everyone else lost, then maybe because they have better goal differential. Well, they have a better goal differential than everyone but Derby County. So if somehow manages to win and Luton wins and Derby loses, then that would be the only way, maybe. But still, Hull would need a win to feel good about having a chance of staying up. Let's head to the playoff race. We have Sheffield United hosting Blackburn. Blackburn are only a point off the playoffs. They have a better goal differential than Millwall, but not as good as Coventry. Well, they actually have a better goal differential right now than Coventry. So they would need a win, and they would need Coventry to slip up, and they would need Millwall to slip up. But a win for Blackburn would see them go up to 68, so they would really hope like Bristol City maybe falter as well. They're playing Sheffield United at Bramall Lane, and that feels like Sheffield United are going to want to give their fans one last good showing before the playoffs, and I think Sheffield United are probably going to pull this one out in a gritty 3-2 win, I would say. This feels like a game that could be high scoring, a fun game to end the year for both sides. Blackburn are on a bit of a run, but against teams that you feel like they should beat, Sunderland not really, like Watford and Millwall and Luton. Besides Sunderland, those are the teams that they should beat. Overall, I feel like this is maybe where the run ends for Blackburn. I think they barely missed the playoffs, but it's a good way for Valérien Ismaël to go out strong with a good winning streak like this. Has really, I think, secured his place at Blackburn for next year, however much the fans might not like that. Leeds do take on Plymouth Argyle. Plymouth, even with a win here at home park, would stay relegated because they just have such a horrendous goal differential, and everyone else is like way better than them. Right now, Plymouth have a negative 36 goal differential. Luton have a negative 22. Preston have a negative 11. Derby have negative 8. Stoke have negative 17 and Hull have negative 10. So they would have to hope likes of like Luton somehow just fall to pieces against West Brom, but I don't see that happening. I do think Leeds are going to come out wanting the title and they will win it at home park. I'm going to say 2-1 maybe. Ryan Hardy scores a late consolation goal for Plymouth, but I do think Plymouth are going to be relegated regardless. just because their goal differential, even with a win, doesn't mean anything. But hats off to like Mirich and the staff for really turning the confidence around at Plymouth after Wayne Rooney left and giving Argyle fans a lot of hope. I do think Plymouth could come back first time asking just because even though they're a bottom side championship team, they aren't probably going to be that bad in League One. If they are, I'd be shocked. There's too much to do here in this case, and Plymouth just left it too little too late, and that loss to Middlesbrough really cost them. Then we have Millwall taking on Burnley at Turf Moor. Millwall are tied on points with Coventry. They would need a Coventry loss or draw. They would need to draw and match Coventry points, get a better goal differential, probably at bare minimum. They probably need at least a 5-goal win and maybe a 0-0 draw for Coventry. But a win only and a Coventry loss probably gets the job done for Millwall. So they would really need to come out and play their best ever game against Burnley. However, I just don't see that happening. Burnley are just going to go out, see if they can't catch leads on a bad day, and maybe win the title. They'll be at Turf Moor. Burnley are just too good defensively. Millwall can surprise you on a good day, but Burnley are just too good defensively, and it's going to be at home for Burnley, so I don't see the Lions pull this off. They'll just miss the playoffs. But it's another good run for them, really. I think they played well near the end of the season to make it interesting, but they just left it too late for them to sneak into those playoffs. And then finally, the big game, the game that probably hinges all the playoff marbles, is Middlesbrough going to Coventry City. And this is a game between two teams that really have thrown away chances. Coventry threw away two good chances against two bottom half teams in Luton Town and Plymouth Argyle to really clinch a playoff spot. If they had won both of those games, there's probably no discussion, and this game is probably a very meaningless game. Meanwhile, Middlesbrough, they threw away chances to overtake Coventry and make this a game that would feel almost impossible for Coventry to win anything in and get to the playoffs. And now Middlesbrough need a win. If they win, they would have the better goal differential. So they would probably need Millwall and Blackburn to draw or lose, and they would need to win. They would need very specific results to go their way if they were to win this, but I just don't see it happening. It's going to be at the CBS. It's going to be a Coventry team that will want this. They have felt like a team that has wanted results, they just can't get them. Middlesbrough, meanwhile, they collapsed against Sheffield Wednesday. Should have had a 2-0 lead, didn't. And then last week against Norwich felt very flat. Didn't feel like they wanted it completely at home, no less, in their final home game of the season. The point was good. They did need the point, but a win would have really made this an interesting game and probably would have left everything up to Coventry to win it. However, now Middlesbrough need to win this and have results go their way. Watch Middlesbrough somehow come out and give a 5-star performance, lock up the playoffs somehow. I just don't see it. I think Coventry will win this 2-1, and Middlesbrough will miss the playoffs after having a bare minimum expectation of making the playoffs. And that's very disappointing for a lot of Borough fans who felt like this was a very positive transfer window in the summer. This was a team that could do it. They just collapsed after the January transfer window, and some very disappointing results as well after that. And with that, we come to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Please follow us and like and subscribe on all our social platforms. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, and Apple. We also make a lot of short content on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. We are also on X and Blue Sky. And if you could like and follow us, that would be really great. We'd greatly appreciate that. Turn on that bell for all the notifications so you don't miss an episode or an upload. And thank you so much again for all your support. We greatly appreciate it. This is an awesome journey we're on, and we're heading into an exciting final bit of the EFL season and getting into some good stuff with the NFL. So don't miss out on anything, and we'll see you for the next episode.